The massive research vessel drifted silently above the ancient planet, its gleaming metallic surface reflecting the distant starlight. Earth, a world that had been nothing more than a whisper in galactic archives for centuries, now lay spread out beneath their scanning equipment like a forgotten puzzle waiting to be solved. Dr. Kang Hyok adjusted the quantum scanners, his experienced hands moving with practiced precision. The planet's surface looked deceptively simple, layers of accumulated geological history concealing secrets that had remained hidden for 500,000 years. Beside him, Dr. Yoon Dae-hyun carefully monitored the initial data streams, his eyes flickering across holographic displays that danced with complex readings. "Something's different about this planet," Kang Hyok muttered, more to himself than to his colleague. The scanning equipment was picking up unusual energy signatures that didn't match any known planetary composition. Fragments of technological remnants peek through geological layers like forgotten memories struggling to be remembered. The first landing module detached from the main research vessel, its stabilizers humming softly as it descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. Millennia of environmental changes had transformed the landscape. What was once a bustling civilization now appeared as nothing more than a silent, rocky terrain, marked by strange geometric patterns. As the module touched down, dust billowed around its landing site. The team's protective suits sealed automatically, protecting them from potential environmental hazards. Kang Hyok was the first to step onto the surface, his boots leaving perfect imprints on ground that hadn't felt a living touch for hundreds of thousands of years. Initial surface scans revealed something extraordinary. Beneath what appeared to be simple rock formations were complex technological signatures. Embedded deep within the planet's crust were structures that defied conventional archaeological understanding. They weren't just remnants. They seemed like carefully preserved time capsules. Dr. Yoon began mapping the unusual energy signatures. Strange quantum fluctuations emerged from specific locations, suggesting intentional preservation rather than random geological formation. Each reading told a story of incredible technological sophistication. "These aren't natural formations," Yoon whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "These look like deliberate installations." The team's initial excavation site revealed the first significant discovery: a perfectly preserved quantum data core, protected by layers of advanced materials that had resisted decay for 500,000 years. Its surface was etched with microscopic patterns that seemed to pulse with a strange, dormant energy. Kang Hyok carefully extracted the core, his movements precise and controlled. Something about this artifact felt different. It wasn't just a piece of technology. It felt like a message waiting to be understood. As the first day of exploration concluded, the research team gathered in their mobile research station. Holographic displays flickered with initial data, revealing glimpses of a civilization that had apparently prepared for its own potential extinction. The artifacts they had discovered suggested a level of technological planning that was almost impossible to comprehend. The planet seemed to watch them, silent, patient, waiting. "We're missing something," Kang Hyok said to his team as night fell across the alien landscape. "These aren't just random technological remnants. This looks like a deliberate, carefully constructed preservation system." Little did they know that, with each scan, with each careful excavation, they were getting closer to uncovering a secret that would reshape everything known about technological civilization. The planet held its breath, its ancient systems slowly awakening after centuries of silent slumber. Something was about to be revealed, something that had been waiting, carefully preserved for the right moment of discovery. The research station hummed with quiet energy as Dr. Park Jin-woo carefully examined the recovered quantum data core. Specialized equipment surrounded him, each machine designed to decode the most complex technological archives without damaging the delicate information contained within. Hours passed. Algorithms worked tirelessly, breaking through layers of encrypted data that seemed to resist traditional decryption methods. Something about this core was different. It wasn't just storing information, it was protecting it. Suddenly, the first fragment appeared on the screen. a burst of visual data that made everyone in the room pause. It wasn't just a simple historical record. It was a carefully constructed memory, a living, breathing snapshot of human civilization from thousands of years ago. The image showed a world in transition, cities that seemed to breathe with technological life, structures that blended seamlessly with natural environments. But there was something more, an underlying message of preparation, of survival. Dr. Yoon Dae-hyun noticed it first. The data wasn't random. Each fragment was connected, like pieces of an intricate puzzle waiting to be assembled. Fragments of scientific research, genetic preservation techniques, and complex technological blueprints began to take shape. "This isn't just a historical record," he whispered to Kang Hyuk. "This looks like a survival manual." The quantum core revealed extraordinary details. Humans had not just been preparing for their potential extinction. They had been planning a way to resurrect their entire civilization. Genetic repositories were carefully distributed across multiple locations. Technological seeds were planted in ways that could potentially reactivate centuries or even millennia later. One particularly fascinating fragment showed a group of scientists working on what appeared to be a massive preservation project. They weren't just thinking about saving their current generation. They were planning for a potential rebirth centuries into the future. Dr. Park noticed something even more intriguing. Hidden within the data were complex mathematical sequences that seemed to predict potential future scenarios. It was as if the humans had created a sophisticated predictive system that could adapt and respond to changing cosmic conditions. The research team worked through the night. Each decoded fragment revealed more about humanity's extraordinary preparation. They weren't just a civilization that had fallen. They were a species that had planned its potential resurrection with incredible precision. A particularly startling discovery came when they uncovered a detailed genetic preservation protocol. Thousands of genetic samples carefully preserved and encoded with complex restoration mechanisms. These weren't just simple biological samples. They were complete blueprints for potentially recreating entire human populations. "They knew," Kang Hyuk said quietly, looking at the accumulated data. "They knew there was a possibility they might not survive, so they created a backup plan." The quantum core seemed to pulse with a strange energy. It was more than just a storage device. It felt almost alive, like a sleeping mechanism waiting to be fully awakened. As dawn broke across the alien landscape, the research team realized they were looking at something unprecedented. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't just their technological prowess. It was their ability to plan beyond their own immediate existence. More fragments continued to emerge. Complex technological designs, cultural archives, scientific breakthroughs, all carefully preserved and protected. Each piece told a story of a civilization that refused to be completely forgotten. Dr. Yoon found a particularly interesting section, what appeared to be a message. Buried deep within layers of quantum encryption, it seemed to be a note from the past to whatever civilization might eventually discover their archives. The message was simple but profound. Survival is more than just existing. It's about the potential to begin again. As the first rays of sunlight hit the research station, the team knew they had discovered something extraordinary. These weren't just fragments of memory. They were the carefully constructed seeds of a potential future. The research station fell silent as Dr. Park Jin-woo began decoding the most complex layer of the quantum archive. His hands moved carefully across specialized holographic interfaces, each touch revealing another piece of an incredible technological puzzle. What started as a simple decryption process quickly transformed into something far more extraordinary. The technological cipher wasn't just a data storage system. It was a complete blueprint for civilization resurrection. Administrator Choi Yoonbi watched in amazement as complex systems began to take shape. The humans had created something beyond simple preservation. They had designed a complete survival mechanism that could potentially reactivate centuries after their apparent extinction. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A series of quantum-encoded networks revealed multiple backup systems strategically placed across different star systems. These weren't random technological remnants. They were carefully planned resurrection protocols. Dr. Kang Hyok noticed something strange happening with the scanning equipment. As more of the cipher was decoded, subtle energy patterns began to emerge. The technology seemed to be more than just stored information. It appeared to be a living, adaptive system. "This is impossible," Yoon Dae-hyun muttered, checking and rechecking the readings. The technological cipher contained multiple layers of complexity that defied current scientific understanding. It was a system designed to adapt, survive, and potentially rebuild an entire civilization. The most shocking revelation came from a deeply encrypted section. Humans had not just preserved their technological knowledge, they had created adaptive artificial intelligence systems that could potentially reconstruct their entire culture and technological infrastructure. Genetic repositories were carefully integrated with technological networks. Each system was designed to work in perfect harmony, with multiple backup options and redundancy protocols. If one system failed, another would activate. If an entire network was destroyed, another would emerge from a completely different location. Some sections of the cipher revealed incredible details about human survival strategies. They had mapped out potential extinction scenarios and created comprehensive response mechanisms. Climate change, cosmic disasters, technological collapse. Each possibility had been carefully considered and planned for. The most fascinating element was the adaptive nature of the technology. Unlike traditional preservation methods, these systems could learn, adjust, and potentially evolve based on changing cosmic conditions. They weren't just static archives. They were living, breathing technological ecosystems. Dr. Park discovered a particularly intriguing section that seemed to be a core activation protocol. It contained complex mathematical sequences that could potentially trigger the entire resurrection mechanism under specific cosmic conditions. They didn't just preserve their civilization, Kang Hyok said, studying the decoded information. They created a complete rebirth mechanism. The technological cipher revealed layers of incredible complexity. Quantum-encoded cultural archives, advanced artificial intelligence networks, and genetic preservation techniques were all interconnected in ways that seemed almost organic. Some sections suggested that humans had distributed their technological seeds across multiple star systems. If one location was compromised, another could potentially activate and begin the reconstruction process. As more of the cipher was decoded, the research team began to understand the true scale of human preparation. This wasn't just a backup plan. It was a comprehensive strategy for potential resurrection that could span thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of years. The most chilling aspect was the system's apparent intelligence. It wasn't just a passive storage mechanism. The technological cipher seemed capable of making complex decisions, adapting to new environments, and potentially reconstructing human civilization from the most minimal of resources. Administrator Choi Yunbi looked at her team, a mixture of excitement and apprehension filling the research station. They were looking at something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization that had planned its own potential resurrection with incredible precision. As the final layers of the technological cipher were decoded, a strange energy seemed to pulse through the research equipment. Something was awakening, something that had been carefully preserved for hundreds of thousands of years. The galaxy was about to be reminded of humanity's extraordinary potential for survival. The research station trembled slightly, though no external force seemed to cause the movement. Dr. Kang Hyok noticed it first, a subtle vibration that didn't match any known scientific explanation. Quantum scanners began displaying strange energy signatures, patterns that seemed to shift and change like living information dancing across holographic displays. Something was happening beneath the surface of the planet, something that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Yoon Dae-hyun checked and rechecked the equipment. The energy signatures weren't random. They were structured, deliberate, almost like a complex communication system slowly coming to life. Fragments of ancient technology began to respond. Small devices buried deep within the planetary crust started to pulse with a soft, rhythmic energy. It was as if thousands of technological seeds were slowly awakening from a centuries-long sleep. "This isn't normal," Yoon whispered, his hands moving quickly across the scanning interface. The quantum whispers were becoming more pronounced. What had started as subtle energy fluctuations were now clear, deliberate signals. Administrator Choi Yunbi watched in growing amazement. The planetary surface seemed to be transforming. Areas that had appeared to be simple rock formations now showed complex technological signatures. Microscopic systems were reconfiguring themselves, adapting to the new environmental conditions. Dr. Park Jinwoo discovered something extraordinary buried in the data streams. The quantum whispers weren't just random energy, they were a communication network. A system designed to slowly rebuild, to reconnect, to prepare for something larger. Strange metallic structures began emerging from beneath the planetary surface. They weren't large, some were no bigger than a human hand, but they moved with purpose. Each small device seemed to be communicating, sharing information, preparing something. The research team watched in silent amazement as the quantum whispers grew stronger. It was like watching a massive, complex organism slowly coming back to life. Each signal, each tiny movement, was part of a much larger system. Geological scans revealed incredible details. The entire planet seemed to be a massive, interconnected technological network. Quantum-encoded systems were embedded deep within the planetary crust, waiting, preparing, adapting. They didn't just preserve their technology, Kang Hyok said quietly. They created a living system that could potentially rebuild itself. The quantum whispers began to form more complex patterns, mathematical sequences that seemed to predict and respond to environmental changes, adaptive systems that could potentially reconstruct entire technological infrastructures from minimal resources. Some devices began collecting and analyzing environmental data. Others started creating complex energy networks. Each movement was precise, calculated, part of a larger resurrection protocol that had been waiting for centuries. Dr. Yoon noticed something even more fascinating. The quantum whispers weren't just technological signals. They carried fragments of cultural information, scientific knowledge, genetic data. It was a complete preservation system that went beyond simple technological backup. The research station itself began to experience strange technological interactions. Equipment would momentarily flicker with unfamiliar data streams. Holographic displays would show brief glimpses of what appeared to be human memories, scientific breakthroughs, cultural archives. Administrator Choi felt a chill run down her spine. These weren't just technological remnants. This was a carefully designed system that was slowly coming back to life. A civilization that had found a way to potentially resurrect itself centuries after its apparent extinction. As night fell across the planetary surface, the quantum whispers grew stronger. Tiny technological seeds continued their slow, deliberate awakening. Each pulse, each signal, was part of a massive, complex restoration protocol. The planet seemed to be breathing, waiting, preparing. Something was about to happen. Something that would remind the galaxy of humanity's extraordinary capacity for survival. The quantum whispers continued, a soft, persistent reminder that some stories never truly end. The first signs of awakening came quietly, a subtle shift in planetary energy that most scientific instruments would have missed. Dr. Kang Hyok noticed it first, a microscopic change in the quantum field that suggested something extraordinary was about to happen. Tiny technological seeds began to activate across the planetary surface. What had been dormant for centuries started to pulse with a soft, rhythmic energy. Each device communicated with others, creating a complex network that spread like silent whispers across the planet. Dr. Yoon Dae-hyun watched the holographic displays with growing intensity. The quantum networks were expanding, connecting, rebuilding. It wasn't just technological restoration, it was a complete resurrection protocol coming to life. Strange formations began emerging from beneath the planetary surface. Metallic structures that seemed to breathe with their own internal logic. Complex systems that could adapt, rebuild, and potentially reconstruct entire technological infrastructures. Administrator Choi Eunbi realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a technological revival. This was a civilization preparing to potentially rebirth itself after 500,000 years of silence. The research team's equipment began to behave strangely. Holographic displays showed fragments of human memories, scientific breakthroughs, cultural archives. It was as if the planet itself was remembering, slowly coming back to consciousness. Genetic repositories hidden deep within the planetary crust began to activate, complex biological systems that could potentially reconstruct entire populations. Not just simple DNA samples, but complete blueprints for human restoration. Dr. Park Jin-woo discovered something even more remarkable. The awakening wasn't just technological or biological. It carried cultural memories, scientific knowledge, entire civilizational archives, a complete preservation of human existence. Quantum energy patterns began to form complex mathematical sequences. Each pattern suggested an incredibly sophisticated restoration protocol. The systems were learning, adapting, preparing for potential reconstruction. Strange atmospheric changes started occurring. Microscopic technological networks began transforming the planetary environment. What had been a seemingly dead world started showing signs of potential life restoration. They planned this, Kang Hyuk whispered, watching the incredible transformation. An entire civilization's resurrection protocol, waiting for the right moment. The research team watched in silent amazement as the planet slowly came back to life. Technological seeds continued their deliberate awakening. Each pulse, each signal was part of a massive restoration mechanism. Fragments of human knowledge began streaming through quantum networks, scientific discoveries, cultural memories, technological blueprints, all carefully preserved and now slowly returning to active status. Administrator Choi realized they were more than just observers. They were potentially witnessing the first moments of a civilization's potential rebirth, a species that had found a way to survive beyond its apparent extinction. The quantum networks continued expanding. Each moment revealed more complexity, more incredible potential. It wasn't just about technological restoration. It was about the potential to completely reconstruct a civilization. Dr. Yoon noticed something extraordinary happening with the genetic repositories. Complex biological systems were preparing, adapting, potentially ready to reconstruct entire human populations, not just as individuals, but as a complete, functioning society. The planetary surface began to change. Microscopic technological systems started transforming environmental conditions. What had been a silent, rocky terrain was slowly showing signs of potential restoration. Dr. Park discovered a final hidden message buried deep within the quantum archives. A simple statement that seemed to capture the entire restoration protocol. Civilization is not defined by its survival, but by its capacity to rise again. As the research team watched, the planet continued its slow, deliberate awakening. Technological seeds pulsed with growing intensity. Quantum networks expanded. Genetic systems prepared. Something was happening. Something extraordinary. Humanity was potentially preparing to be reborn. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would emerge from the silent planet's awakening.